There are some lives that look perfect from the outside, but when you take a closer look, you realize they are built on years of pressure, pain, and quiet strength. The story of Nicole Kidman is one of those stories. At first glance, she appears to have everything: fame, awards, beauty, and global respect. But behind that image is a life filled with emotional highs and deep personal struggles that shaped who she became. As an actress, she was often asked to go beyond normal limits, to feel things deeply and show real emotion on screen. That kind of work does not stay on the set. It follows you home. Over the years, she took on roles that pushed her mind and body to the edge, and she later admitted that some of those experiences left her feeling physically and emotionally drained. But what made her story even more powerful was not just her work, it was what happened in her personal life. At a stage in life when many people slow down and look for peace, she faced unexpected emotional challenges that shook her deeply. And then, at the age of 58, she said something in an interview that caught everyone off guard. It was not just surprising, it changed how people saw her. The same woman who had spent years protecting her private life suddenly opened a door that few expected. That moment did not come out of nowhere. It was the result of a long journey filled with experiences that most people never see. To understand that moment, you have to go back to the very beginning of her story, to a time when her life was simple and the future was still unknown. Nicole Kidman was born far from the spotlight, in Honolulu, Hawaii, in 1967. Her parents were Australians who were living in the United States for a short time because of their studies. Her father was a scientist and a psychologist, and her mother was a strong, active woman who believed in speaking up for what was right. Even though Nicole was just a baby, the world around her was already full of energy and strong ideas. Her parents were involved in social movements and were not afraid to stand for their beliefs. This meant that from a very young age, she was exposed to a world that was not quiet or simple. Soon after her birth, the family moved back to Australia, where she grew up in a more peaceful environment. But even in that calm setting, there was something different about her. Teachers and people around her noticed that she was more observant than other children. She watched people closely, paid attention to emotions, and seemed to understand feelings in a deeper way. This natural ability later became one of her greatest strengths as an actress. At a young age, she started ballet, which helped her develop discipline and control. Then, during a small school performance, she discovered something important about herself. Standing on stage, even in a simple role, she felt a connection with the audience that she had never felt before. It was not about being the center of attention, but about telling a story and making people feel something. That moment planted a seed that would later grow into a full career. However, life was not always easy. When she was still a teenager, her family faced a serious challenge that would change her in ways she did not expect. When Nicole Kidman was just a teenager, her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. This moment became a turning point in her life. Instead of focusing only on school and dreams, she had to step into a role of responsibility much earlier than most people her age. She helped take care of her mother, supported her family, and learned what it meant to face fear and uncertainty up close. Watching someone you love go through illness is never easy, and for a young person, it can be overwhelming. But this experience gave her a deeper understanding of pain, strength, and human emotion. These lessons stayed with her and later became part of her acting. When she played emotional roles, people could feel that it was real, because she had lived through real moments of struggle. As she grew older, she started taking acting more seriously and began working in films and television. Her early roles were not easy or glamorous. She often worked in difficult conditions, spending long hours on set and pushing herself physically and mentally. But these experiences helped her build strength and confidence. She learned that success was not just about talent, but also about hard work and resilience. Slowly, people in the industry began to notice her. She was not just another young actress. She had something different, something deeper. That difference opened doors for her, and soon, she found herself stepping into bigger roles that would change her life forever. The move to Hollywood was a major step for Nicole Kidman, and it brought both opportunity and pressure. One of her early major roles in an American film introduced her to a global audience and also led to a relationship that would become one of the most talked about parts of her life. Her marriage brought attention, fame, and constant public interest. From the outside, it looked like a perfect story, but inside, things were more complicated. Over time, the pressures of fame and personal challenges began to take a toll. When the marriage ended, it was not just a personal loss, it was a public event that everyone watched and discussed. She later spoke about how difficult that period was, describing feelings of confusion, pain, and even fear about what would come next. At the same time, she was building her career and taking on roles that required intense emotional effort. Instead of stepping back, she moved forward with even more determination. She chose roles that challenged her, that pushed her to explore different sides of herself. Some of these performances became defining moments in her career and earned her critical praise. People began to see her not just as a celebrity, but as a serious actress who was willing to take risks. However, success did not erase her personal struggles. Behind the scenes, she was still dealing with emotional challenges that were not always visible to the public. As the years passed, Nicole Kidman continued to build a strong and respected career. She worked on a wide range of projects, showing her ability to adapt and grow. But her journey was not without pain. One of the most sensitive parts of her life involved her family and the relationships that changed over time. These were deeply personal matters, and she rarely spoke about them in detail. When she did, it was clear that these experiences had left a lasting impact on her. At the same time, the entertainment industry itself can be challenging, especially for women as they grow older. There is constant pressure to stay relevant, to keep proving your value, and to fight against unfair expectations. Many actors struggle with this stage of their careers, but she chose to face it head-on. She took on roles that were meaningful and continued to push herself creatively. Even when some projects did not succeed, she did not stop. She kept moving forward, showing a level of determination that inspired many people. Her story became not just about success, but about endurance. It showed that even in a world full of judgment and pressure, it is possible to keep going and find new purpose. Then came the moment that brought everything together. At 58, during an interview, Nicole Kidman said something that surprised many people. It was not loud or dramatic, but it was honest. She spoke in a way that showed vulnerability and strength at the same time. For someone who had spent years protecting her private life, this moment felt different. It was as if she had reached a point where she no longer needed to hide certain truths. This honesty connected with people on a deeper level. It reminded them that behind the fame and success, she is still a human being with feelings, struggles, and experiences that shaped her life. That moment did not erase the past, but it gave it new meaning. It showed that every challenge she faced, every loss, and every success was part of a larger story. A story of growth, resilience, and self-discovery. And in the end, that is what makes her journey so powerful. It is not just about what she achieved, but about how she continued to move forward, even when things were difficult. Her story reminds us that life is not always easy, but it is always worth facing with courage and honesty. After that powerful moment of honesty, the story of Nicole Kidman did not suddenly become easier, but it did become clearer. People began to understand her not just as a performer, but as a person who had spent decades balancing fame with real-life struggles. As she moved further into her late 50s, she continued to take on roles that many others might avoid. Instead of stepping away or choosing only safe projects, she leaned into stories that explored complicated emotions, difficult relationships, and the hidden sides of human nature. This decision showed a kind of courage that is not always visible. It is easy to stay comfortable when you have already achieved success, but she chose to keep challenging herself. At the same time, the industry around her was still changing. New actors were rising, trends were shifting, and attention was constantly moving. Yet she remained relevant, not because she followed trends, but because she stayed true to her style and her depth. Audiences who had watched her for years began to see her in a new light. Younger viewers discover her work and realize that her performances carried a kind of emotional truth that felt rare. She was no longer just a star from the past, she was still shaping the present. And behind all of this was a quiet determination that had been building since her early years, a belief that her story was not finished yet. No matter what challenges came her way. One of the most interesting parts of Nicole Kidman's journey is how she learned to live with both public attention and private pain at the same time. Fame can be overwhelming, especially when every part of your life becomes a topic of discussion. Over the years, she experienced moments where her personal life was shared and debated by people who did not truly know her. This kind of attention can create distance between a person and their own identity. It becomes difficult to know where the public image ends and the real person begins. But she slowly found ways to protect herself. She became more careful about what she shared, choosing her words and her moments with intention. This was not about hiding, but about maintaining a sense of control in a world that often tries to take it away. At the same time, she did not completely close herself off. In certain interviews and appearances, she allowed small glimpses into her thoughts and feelings. These moments were often quiet, but they carried a lot of meaning. They showed that she was still processing her experiences, still learning, and still growing. This balance between openness and privacy became one of her defining traits. It allowed her to stay connected to her audience, while also protecting the parts of her life that mattered most. In many ways, this balance is what helped her continue moving forward without losing herself along the way. Another important part of Nicole Kidman's life is her ability to turn personal experience into creative strength. Many actors rely only on technique, but she brought something deeper into her work. The emotions she had felt in real life, whether they were connected to loss, love, or uncertainty, became tools that she could use in her performances. This gave her roles a sense of authenticity that audiences could feel, even if they could not explain it. Over time, she became known for taking on characters that were not simple or easy to understand. These were people with flaws, fears, and complicated inner worlds. Playing such roles requires not just skill, but also emotional courage. It means being willing to explore parts of yourself that are uncomfortable or even painful. She did this again and again, showing a level of commitment that set her apart. At the same time, she also understood the importance of stepping back when needed. Acting at such an intense level can take a toll, and she learned to create space for herself outside of work. This balance between immersion and recovery became essential for her long-term success. It allowed her to continue performing at a high level without losing her sense of self. In this way, her career became not just a series of roles, but a reflection of her personal journey and growth. As time moved forward, Nicole Kidman also became a symbol of resilience in an industry that often focuses on youth and change. Many actors struggle to find meaningful roles as they grow older, but she challenged that pattern. She showed that age does not reduce value, and that experience can actually deepen performance. By choosing strong and complex roles, she helped create more space for stories about mature characters. This had an impact not only on her own career, but also on the industry as a whole. It encouraged writers and directors to think differently and to create opportunities that might not have existed before. At the same time, she continued to support projects that had personal meaning, including stories that highlighted emotional and social issues. This added another layer to her work, showing that she was not only focused on success, but also on purpose. Her influence extended beyond acting, shaping conversations about representation, storytelling, and the role of women in film and television. Despite all of this, she remained grounded in her approach. She did not present herself as perfect or without struggle. Instead, she allowed her journey to speak for itself, with all its ups and downs. This honesty made her more relatable and more respected, both within the industry and among audiences around the world. Looking back at the full journey of Nicole Kidman, it becomes clear that her story is not just about fame or success, but about transformation. From a young girl who quietly observed the world around her, to a global figure who shared her truth in a moment that surprised many, her path has been shaped by both choice and circumstance. Each stage of her life added something new, whether it was strength, understanding, or perspective. The challenges she faced did not disappear, but they became part of her identity in a way that allowed her to grow. That moment at 58 was not just a single event, it was the result of everything that came before it. It represented a point where experience, reflection, and courage came together. And while the public may focus on that one moment, the deeper story is about the journey that led to it. It is about learning to face difficult truths, to accept change, and to keep moving forward even when the path is uncertain. In the end, her story reminds us that life is not defined by one moment, but by the many steps that lead to it. And sometimes, the most powerful moments are the ones that come after years of quiet strength and persistence. Even after reaching a stage in life where many would choose comfort over challenge, Nicole Kidman continued to move forward with a sense of purpose that felt both quiet and powerful. What made this phase of her life different was not just the roles she chose, but the mindset behind those choices. She was no longer trying to prove herself in the same way she once had to. Instead, she seemed more focused on telling stories that mattered, stories that reflected real emotions and real struggles. This shift gave her work a deeper meaning. It was no longer only about performance but about connection. She understood that audiences were not just watching for entertainment, they were looking for something they could relate to, something that felt honest. At the same time, she also became more aware of the importance of balance in her life. After years of intense work and public attention, she placed greater value on moments of quiet and personal space. This did not mean stepping away from her career, but rather approaching it with a different perspective. She learned when to push forward and when to pause, when to speak and when to stay silent. This awareness helped her maintain a sense of stability in a world that often feels unpredictable. It also showed a kind of growth that goes beyond professional success. It reflected a deeper understanding of herself and what truly mattered to her as a person. Another key part of this stage in Nicole Kidman's life was the way she began to reflect more openly on her past. While she had always been careful about what she shared, there were moments when she allowed herself to look back and speak with honesty about the experiences that shaped her. These reflections were not dramatic or attention-seeking. Instead, they were thoughtful and measured, offering insight without giving away everything. She spoke about the challenges she faced, the lessons she learned, and the ways in which those experiences changed her. This kind of reflection added depth to her public image. It showed that she was not trying to present a perfect story, but a real one. At the same time,